Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason Aspel, Deputy Executive Officer with South Coast AQMD, the Engineering and Permitting Division. Thank you for participating in our hybrid meeting for South Coast AQMD Permit Streamlining Task Force Subcommittee. We have three formats for participation: in person, the Zoom app, and teleconference. Please silence your other communication devices to prevent disruptions during the meeting. In-person attendees must not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the meeting room. All participants on Zoom, except for subcommittee members and South Coast AQMD staff, will be placed on mute by the host. You will not be able to mute or unmute your line manually. For each agenda item, public comment will be taken. For those of you in the room, you will be called on when it's your turn to speak. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make public comment on the Zoom screen, please click the raise hand button. For those calling in by phone, you can dial *9 to signal that you would like to comment. Your name or part of your phone number will be called when it is your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes. We will start out with not using the timer on this meeting. For all items on the agenda, or it may be limited to 3 minutes or less for public comment. The meeting chair may provide a shorter length of time depending on the number of requests to speak received to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard. The countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. Please note you can hang up and leave the Zoom at any time. In terms of decorum, please adhere to the speaker time limit if it is imposed and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being dropped from the meeting. Lastly, please be aware that this video conference is being recorded. By participating in this meeting, hosted by South Coast AQMD, you agree to authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during this live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD. For those of you who are joining us in person, if you need to use your restrooms, they are located in the lobby. And if there is an evacuation, both of you can please follow staff orderly out to the parking lot. This concludes the housekeeping remarks. I'll bring the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And if we could please start the slides. As you start the slides, we'll do roll call.
Good afternoon. Bill Lamar, absent. Bill Quinn.
Present.
Thank you. Bill Pierce.
Here.
David Rothbard.
Here.
Judy York. Absent.
She does have her hand raised, but Judy, we know you are there due to Brown Act and the fact that you're a task force member. Participating for a non-notice location. You'll be able to observe but not participate. Sorry about that, but you'll be able to take everything in, and we look forward to your feedback and we'll move forward. All right, so let's jump in. Let's go to our next slide, please. And next slide. All right, for our agenda today, we have a couple quicker items before we get to a bigger discussion items. But first, we're going to introduce the change of owner operator guidelines, which we just updated really quick. We just wanted to make sure everyone is has access to those, is aware of those, and then we'll be moving on to what we've been working on for permitting public notices. And then big item, which we hope to have a lot of discussion on, is revisiting our certified permitting professional program. We'll have staff will have a brief presentation, but it is really intended to foster discussion today. So let's go to our next slide. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Jillian Wong, who will very briefly discuss the change of operator guidelines.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So on these guidelines, there are really a couple of just very surgical amendments, changes, if you will. One is removing, I think, there used to be a requirement that if there was a change in the controlling entity of a corporation LLC, that it required the change of owner operator. I think what we found out is that it really doesn't affect the permit. And so therefore, we're taking that off as a situation where new permits will be required. And then if you go to the top of page 2, on that first bullet point, there are some clarifications that were added to that with regards to membership interest in an LLC and the situations where you would where new permits are not required. So it went from new permits required to new permits not required. And that was something that we ran across with some facilities, and so we thought it would be wise to update these guidelines to reflect that the permits are not required.
Right.
Questions?
This is, posted on your website. It was provided to everybody, more information item. Can open up to the task force for.
Just a quick question is, I don't think that's listed in a rule.
So in Rule 209, it actually references these guidelines. So as I think it was adopted on that date or as subsequently modified by the executive officer. So this would serve as a modification, and this would become the updated owner guidelines that would be in effect.
So on the website, is that could be posted such that it's easy to find in the future? That's my only question.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is the plan, that we would, be more transparent in how we post this information so that people can find it easily.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are working on the website. It's on the permit streamlining task force webpage for today's discussion. But yeah, that's also something we're working on is probably in the next board update is policies and making them more easily accessible. Any other task force members before we open it up to public? All right, seeing none. Does any one or our attendees have any other questions on this item? Again, meant to be more informational than anything else. All right, seeing none, we can move along to our next item. Permitting public notices. This is, let me pause right there. Bill, you had a hand raise at the end of that.
Yeah, I have a point of order because I was just looking at your agenda and it says very clearly at other locations you could participate. And this is a subcommittee. And if I remember correctly, as a subcommittee, you don't have to follow the Brown Act requirements. And by the way, I mean, I'm not listed. My address is not listed on that agenda. So I'm allowed to participate. So it seems like you should allow the other task force members to participate.
We do have your address posted on the first page of the agenda in San Francisco. We do have council here that we consulted beforehand on this.
I'd just say the Permit Streamlining Task Force Subcommittee has been following Brown Act and trying to follow Brown Act for multiple years now. So and concur with what you're saying on the address that's on the agenda.
Yeah, I see it now. I apologize. I was looking at the notice and the notice is not my address, but if you click on the agenda, it is. So, okay, I'm sorry. Please move forward.
No problem. We'll identify it as your meeting location at your address. Thank you. All right. So moving on to item 2, this is something we've been working on permitting public notices. For those that may or may not be familiar, Rule 212 is our public notice requirements for permits, may be triggered for a number of different reasons, be it facility, a new piece of equipment is located near a school, or increase of emissions over certain thresholds, or due to health risk. And then once the public notice is distributed to addresses around the facility and potentially published in a newspaper, that opens up a 30-day public comment period. What we have been working on under the permitting enhancement program is trying to streamline that process a little bit more, but I will hand it over to Senior Manager David Helk and also our staff specialist, Brian Chow, who have been working on this item. Present it.
Thank you, Jason. Again, my name is David Hauk, manager of the special projects team. I'm going to give a quick overview and then I'll turn it over to Brian for most of the details. As Jason mentioned, the public notice process is stemming from Rule 212. And with that program, we looked at not only optimizing existing programs, but new things we could do to help streamline the process overall. This is one of them. It has a few benefits that Brian will get into, but briefly, it lessens the burden on the applicant. Many of these applicants are small businesses. Filing for a permit is a lot of work, and when they find out they have to do a public notice, that's another part of the project that takes up some of their time. They do have the option of having the district do that portion for them right now, or they can still hire a mailing consultant if they will. This has another benefit as well. It lessens the burden on our permitting engineers. The work they used to do related to the public notice is now consolidated into our group, which frees the engineers up to work on other applications. That's kind of a quick overview. I'll let Brian dive into some of the details on this new program. Oh, next slide, please. And one more. There we go.
Thank you, Dave. So this is a comparison that outlines the existing process versus the new process. Under the existing process, applicants are responsible for identifying and collaborating with a contractor to meet the requirements of the public notice. In the past, some businesses have often faced difficulties in determining the appropriate contacts, which has contributed to the extended completion times. This new process enables applicants to utilize South Coast AQMD as a distributor, streamlining the process by allowing applicants to delegate this responsibility over to the district, which ensures the level of involvement required which reduces the level of involvement required from the applicant. This new process also offers several key benefits, including a standardized approach, increased willingness from schools to collaborate with South Coast AQMD, and a streamlined verification process that minimizes the risk of redistribution. Next slide, please. Now we're talking about the updated workflow for the public notice distribution process. Once the permitting engineer receives the request from the facility to use South Coast AQMD as the distributor, they would transfer the public notice portion of the application over to the special projects team. Team SP will initiate the distribution process by contacting schools and identifying addresses within the surrounding areas that require notification. Once the list is finalized, the South Coast AQMD mailroom will handle the physical distribution. The public comment period will commence once the distribution from both the schools and the mailroom has been verified. The duration of the comment period will be 30 days minimum for public input, which ensures the community's involvement and transparency in the permitting process. Next slide, please. Since the launch of this program, we have successfully completed 24 notices with 8 additional notices currently in progress. Under the existing process, distribution typically took between 30 to 120 days plus to complete. In contrast, the new process has reduced this timeframe to between 2 and 34 days, measured from the point when the public notice documents are ready for distribution. The initial feedbacks from both facilities and permitting staff has been positive. Next slide, please. Once again, to summarize the key benefits, this program will centralize the public noticing process, streamlining the workflow and shortening the public notice distribution timeline. Since both the distribution and verification will occur in-house with non-permitting staff, this will allow permit processing engineers to concentrate on their primary work. This program will also provide an option for facilities to use South Coast AQMD for public notice distribution, easing their workload. Next slide, please. We want to include this program into Rules 301's language so that we can recover any costs related to the new process while staying revenue neutral. We also want to see what we can do internally to help improve the process for Title V public noticing. Since the start of the program, we've been assessing staff capabilities, engaging facility interests. As the program has evolved, we have continuously identified areas for improvement. and implemented changes to drive ongoing enhancements. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Brian and David. Before we go to task force discussion, this is a program we've definitely been seeing the benefits of allowing this option. I do want to emphasize this right now. It's an option. We're not going to change that as an option. Some facilities may wish to still do this themselves if they have resources in-house, but recognizing some of the delays we are seeing in the permitting side, the approaches we've taken so far have been fruitful in reducing timelines, or otherwise a applicant may be running into issues working with schools or trying to find a contractor to handle these. So want to open it up for task force discussion right now. If there's any input or questions we can address in this program.
I think you may have answered my question, or at least Clean Water SoCal membership is it's going to be optional. Is there any discussion of maybe making it not optional in the future?
There's always that potential, as Brian was putting it, we have one staff member focused on this right now. I've been describing it as we're stress testing the system right now because, with one staff member is you have those contingencies. Is Brian is allowed to go on vacation. Brian is allowed to be sick. Right now it is an opt. If we were to continue to build out this program, see the benefits of it, we'd be open to it. I'm also hearing that some facilities wish to do it on their own.
So my agency has the resources. We do lead agency for CEQA. It's not a big deal for us to do that.
Yeah.
But if it's, like someone needs to go on vacation and they're sick, I might have the capability of doing it quicker than you can.
Yes.
And I guess the other element's going to be staffing. You only have so many staff positions.
Yes.
Is this a critical path for backlog or anything else? I'm just curious as far as if you have to spend time on something, is this the best bang for your buck?
Yeah, well, yes, Brian doesn't otherwise process permits. It is a staff specialist position. This has actually been very welcome by some of our permitting engineers who otherwise have been having to pursue permit applicants to see if they have been, received materials, contacted school, distributed them. A big time resource is if they distributed it properly, if they hit all the addresses in the radius of the 1/4 mile or 1,000 feet. Permit processing engineers have been doing that work and are now freed up to keep focusing on their permit applications. That is where it's been a great help. And then also, Brian's been able to address some of these quicker because, we do have the mailroom, we do have the resources. Schools are more apt. I don't want to say we're the government, trust us, but we're a government agency. There are these requirements of the school. That's easier than, say, an auto body shop down the street saying, I want to distribute a flyer to the parents of your school. So again, this is our first few months of it. We're still seeing the positive benefits of it. There are some fee recovery mechanisms in 301, but we need to build it out a little bit more to take this new program into account. But for now, it's optional. That resource concern is a thing we consider is, maybe we just keep it optional for now. And then those who like it can benefit from it.
Reasonable.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other task force member questions before we go to the public? All right, seeing none. I do see a hand raised. Natasha Mescal. Sorry, I'm opening public comment for this item.
Natasha, with Ecotech, I want to applaud towards this new initiative. Thank you very much. Great. I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you very much for the positive feedback. Really appreciate Brian efforts. This has been something that's been going on in the background. We'll probably present to the board on our next PEP update, but everything has been going really, really well with this one. It's been a very nice, I don't want to say surprise, it's just been very nice to see the results coming out of the program. Appreciate that. Allison, there we go. Allison Torres, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Allison Torres with Eastern Municipal Water District. I think this is a good initiative. I agree with David's comments about it being optional if a facility wants to execute it themselves. But I was wondering if any cost information is available on what, obviously costs change, but do you have any rough numbers on what the noticing fee that will be applied to the operator will be?
So I think the noticing fee will stay the current noticing fee will stay the same. This will be more of a material considerations, and that's going to be built into the Rule 301 amendment process. So that's going to go through its own public process. So we don't have, that is just initiating internally, and we're building that package. Don't have the fee quite yet, but it will go through that public process.
Okay, great. Thank you for
Yeah.
that clarification.
Something I wanted to add is we kept saying, or we keep saying opt-in. What we're thinking on this process, and I guess we can be flexible on this, is as the engineer is preparing the notice, and then right before any handoff for Brian to handle, the special projects team, which is Brian, is there would be an interaction between the permit processing engineer and the facility. Would you like to take advantage of the program or handle it yourself? And that's where that opt-in would take place. We've had different discussions where that could happen, but right now it just seems to be the most feasible.
And we have had a few that preferred to do it themselves for whatever reason. Yeah.
All right. Seeing no more discussion on this item, thank you very much for the presentation. And we will move on to our CPP item. We can go back to our presentation. This is our bigger item for today. We wanted to allow plenty of time to discuss this. Hope to have a robust discussion. We talked about it one time before in our permit streamlining task force. Probably won't be the last time we talk about this. We're really interested in this item. I'll go ahead and give the presentation, and then what we're going to try I want to try something a little bit different as far as the discussion on this one is. In addition to the task force members, I would like to have more ongoing feedback during this item from the public attendees as well. So what I would like to do is anyone who raises their hand, we can, on the public side, I'd like to go to them as we go, just to have more of the back and forth. After that, we'll probably do one more public comment on this item just to make sure we hit everybody. But just want to let everybody know, if you do have comments on the side, on this, please raise your hand and we'll get to you as we go through the discussion here. So let's go to our next slide, please, and get to presentation. So we do we currently have a certified permitting professional program. It is detailed in the Health and Safety Code under 42-300. Currently, what South Coast AQMD does for this program implementation, which is optional for air districts, we do it, and I believe San Joaquin Valley does it as well. But to certify individuals, we do host a CPP examination annually. I believe this year the meeting or the exam date will be late June. And then if a person passes that exam, they do get lifetime certification if you keep up with your annual fees. In terms of training materials right now, what we have is the CPP manual. I will admit this has not been updated in recent years. there is still some very valuable information in that, but we do understand it does need to be updated as part of this process we'll be talking about today. We do not do any training of candidates or CPPs in-house. What we do there is we do rely on a couple third-party programs that are offered. I believe they span multiple weeks to prepare candidates for the exam. And then once candidates do become a CPP, there is a listing maintained on our website where any prospective permit applicants can access that and contact CPPs. And then also that lists each CPP's services that they provide. Right now we have rough estimate about 120 plus active CPPs. This was a very rough count, but I'd say about 80% of those are consultants. The remaining 20% work for facilities that choose to get their CPP certification. Next slide, please. All right, this slide was, it is all the language from Health and Safety Code. It was not intended to go through and read through with a very tiny font, but I just kind of wanted to lay out what the language did say and kind of frame the discussion of what we'll have here today. But so some highlighted words there, but it is a certification by a district where minimum qualifications have to be established. Right now we do that through the exam. It does also indicate that there be a training program, and then also these permit requirements that are required by the district. We do list some of those in our manual. I think currently right now the goals are necessary to have a complete application, give the tools to calculate emissions from equipment and how to apply South Coast AQMD rules, and then also have a basic understanding of what enforceable permit conditions are. With this certification, what's expected is an expedited review of district personnel with a complete permit package that would come in. Also with that, in C is this includes an audit program. We currently do not have an audit program of CPP beyond the listing of the certified individuals. This is something we wish to discuss here today, how to develop that, also resources needed for that. And then also the Health and Safety Code also identifies potential decertification of CPPs if they knowingly or negligently submit false information. And then also there is identification of identifying any financial conflicts of interest in this code. But this is all presented just so everyone's aware in our discussion today where this comes from in the Health and Safety Code. Next slide, please. So what are we looking to accomplish here? What are desired outcomes is most of all, it's developing more qualified resources for the regulated community, but then also the district can look to support their permit processing duties. And then also what we would look for is what was identified in Health and Safety Code is the expedited review of the permit applications for these enhanced submittals. So everything's been assessed, reviewed, evaluated. It has calculations included in it. And then, we would look to have that complete application and evaluation, compliance demonstrations, compliance assurance that facilities will continue to comply with the requirements into the future, and then also have all the data that's referenced in that package, as well as the process descriptions. And then we'd also look to utilize the CPPs more as we move forward on projects, but then also we have a permit working group is really utilizing the CPP at universe as a resource to identify more streamlining measures and then, hopefully get more permits out the door in a more expedited manner. I'm going to pause here because I see one of our staff members has their hand raised. Oscar, is that an inadvertent hand raise or is there something we need to tend to? I will move on.
Sorry,
Oh,
yeah, sorry, my mistake.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't having any technical issues. Thank you. Next slide, please. So some potential efforts we're looking at on this slide, and the next slide is obviously we need to, if we're expecting a complete application from the CPPs, is we need to establish and communicate those application submittal standards. I think this is something we talk about a lot in this task force, is what is a complete application package, but then that also includes the evaluation part of it as well. And then also developing a potentially initial and ongoing training program in-house to make sure those standards are continually communicated, the rules requirements are communicated, and make sure CPPs are continuing to hit the target on that. And then also potentially revisiting our certification process. Is it appropriate right now? Can that be enhanced? We need continuing education. Like to hear from everybody on that. But then also, talked about the auditing part of it is just the program management. And we have CBP accountability and tracking by staff, but then it's also staff accountability for managing the program as well to make sure we're hitting our goals. Next slide, please. So we did want to throw out there, we have been discussing this internally, but we are at the point as, we hit laid out potential processes, how they could work, and maybe identifying potential challenges and hurdles with those proposals. Thought it best to come back to the task force to have a nice, robust discussion on potential ideas that we can continue to build on. For this process under the permitting enhancement program. But laying, again, this is discussion and this isn't a proposal right now, but potentially we could have a situation where first bullet right now is already in effect as a facility could elect to use a CPP. If there is some sort of audit tracking or program management, it would be up to the CPP to, put their CPP option to use in our program, but then develop the full permit application package submittal, as much as I said, a complete and accurate evaluation, mission calculations, rule analysis, health risk calculations, but then also draft permits and conditions, and then a recommendation for a issuance of the permit. This is all standard with what we expect out of our air quality engineers in-house. And that's what we'll be looking for the CPPs to submit. And then when it comes in-house, what we're thinking is a pre-screening, hopefully very quick, that just makes, a quick preliminary review, make sure everything is there that we would expect from an engineer. And then the expedited part of it is what we're thinking is potentially going to straight, to an initial review by a senior engineer. And again, this is with the strategy of when it comes in-house, it has all the same elements as an air quality engineer handing it off to that same senior engineer. After that is where we get into this feedback loop that many facilities are familiar with, and we would like to hit on in discussion is, what happens well, let's talk about the ideal case. It would then, everything checks out by the senior engineer. Potentially, if it's a very simple application, could go to issuance after that, or may need like one more round of review for the supervising engineer. What we've also been discussing is there's also the off-ramp and what happens if there's things identified in the evaluation that may need revisions. What if there's multiple rounds of that? What if it's not meeting the standards? how do we handle such a case? But what we think is this hopefully would provide for a streamlined approach, but then we got to build out is we don't want to build in the negative too much, but what happens if we're in a situation where we're not getting applications that aren't hitting the standard we expect out of a CPP, but you've got to establish that first. Again, this is all for discussion here, so plan to have lots of back and forth on this. So let's go to our next slide, please. So here's the full discussion, but we want to hear from everybody. There's going to be open discussion. What should our training elements be? That workflow I was talking about, how do we develop it? How do we, is there anything else we need to consider? Other ideas? And then identify the conflict of interest provisions. Facilities usually go out and hire their consultants who may be CPPs to do that, addressing any conflicts there. Permit fee mechanisms, if we do add more resources to manage this program, how do we account for that? How do we recoup costs? Obviously, ideally, this would be taking less time in the permit processing, so is there fee considerations there for spending less time on it? And then any auditing requirements we'd like to hear about. And I kind of skipped ahead and already touched on cost recovery and resources. So that's a lot of what we've been discussing in bullet items. Let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I do, we'll initially open it up for task force members, but everybody, I do want to open up to the public too to start weighing in on these items, but I do see Bill Quinn's hand raised first.
Great.
Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Jason. Well, first of all, I want to say that our group met last month to talk about our priorities for next year. And this was right up there, near the top of our list. We think this is really an important program, and we're thrilled to see you jumping back on it. I was wondering, just kind of as background, if you could share with us kind of like, what I heard is in past years, this was a very successful program, and then something happened. And now it's not used because it doesn't seem to speed up permitting. I'm wondering, without diving into too much detail, if you can just tell us your recollection of, was this a successful program and what happened? And I only bring this up so that we can evaluate what happened so that we don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, and I'll ask for some assistance from managers if I don't hit on every detail, but I think what we saw is we were getting from CPPs, they would affix their, I think, sticker to it, that it was a CPP application. It would go to staff. It would be an expanded evaluation, maybe not include all the elements, but I think what ended up happening is staff would end up doing an entire evaluation on their own as well. Not necessarily, using it as a tool to build off of, but not necessarily it being in the handoff where it's ready to go to senior engineer for review. So I think that it may have evolved over time. That was my experience as a permit processing engineer, is may have been missing some elements, but then and I know Judy's here. I really wish she could have been present. I understand the circumstances, but fully understand the feedback we put in there. We talked about that when previous task force is staff would do that, but then the CPPs would never hear back on what those deficiencies were to build off of. And then the next time there would be a more robust evaluation of what we were expecting. So I think that's kind of how it happened over time until, where we are today, where it really just needs to be maybe just rethought or reinvigorated for us and everybody else.
Yeah, real quick, my recollection was along those same lines. The program was there, but the formality of the feedback wasn't there. It was more of an informal process, and I think if we establish some more formal guidelines, it'll keep that feedback loop going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will take some time. I hope I answered your question there, Bill.
Yeah, this is helpful. I just want to make sure this moves forward and it moves forward successfully. We don't find ourselves spending all this time and then we come up with a program that doesn't really save any time in the permitting process. So I think I'm expressing this as both hope and as a caution. So,
Yes, absolutely. I think this, out of anything, has the potential to be a really great resource. But then we want to be mindful too. I mean, I mentioned some of the negative items of, we want to focus more on the carrot, not the stick. Let me, David Rothbart has his hand raised, and then I see a few in the attendees that I'll get to next. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Appreciate the effort, and I echo Bill's comments. It's very helpful to have this program revisited and have a way to get the permits issued faster. One initial just thought that came to mind is, how does this differ, or maybe it's supplemental to the XPP program, where you say, just hypothetically, if I get a CPP to prepare an application and do expedited permitting, how would that differ than just one?
The XPP program provides the fees for staff to work on it. So that would potentially, if you're talking in addition to the senior engineer coming in on off hours to work on it, or the pre-screening, it's that extra element of added hours that staff otherwise wouldn't be able to work on it.
I guess the indirect question is, have we looked at where there might be bottlenecks in the system? Because right now, if it's the staff is getting the permits, what I've seen is staff is going through the applications pretty quickly, getting the seniors pretty quickly, and then it bogs down at a certain point.
Yeah.
So where is the bottleneck, and where do we need to address bottlenecks to get things going faster? Is this the bottleneck, or is this just helping it out, but it might slow down at a different point anyway?
Yeah, I think, and we do periodically present those statistics. We probably will at the next permit streamlining task force, just for everyone to understand that. But that is a concern, is that in recent history has been at the supervising engineer level for review. Does that now add to that? Or can we then build that out a little bit more for reviewers? That is something to consider.
Just making sure that the effort's worth it. You get a much better application. How is this going to relieve the workload and free people up to do what to make sure the permits get issued faster?
Yeah.
And is it just as far as the format we're going for? Is this to do enhanced application, or we're going for the I'm blanking out the term as far as the EPA, the
Statement of basis. Should say.
Is that the objective, is to have the CP prepare the statement of basis?
Yeah, it would be for whatever project they're working on. Honestly, as we go through it, as we build the program out, we would probably start smaller, maybe on minor sources. But again, it's all part of that discussion is, if you have a higher bar, and then we have the feedback loop of, how does that all work?
And I think, at least on my side, I have projects that have to go forward. And if it's a matter of hiring someone to do this, to put together a statement of basis or whatever it may be, the cost, it's something to consider. But for a high profile project, I'm going to give like checkout. So what is it necessary? What can we do on our side to get you what you need so it goes through the system faster? I think a lot of people might have that perspective. So that's the open-ended question. Is this the right tool to fix that?
Okay. No, thank you. We'll go down the line. Bill, and then next will be Rachel.
So I just want to follow David's comments. I mean, historically, my facilities, we haven't made use of the CPP program primarily because we didn't see that it aided in getting the permits through the system in a quicker manner. I mean, so if we're gonna, it almost looks like you're just talking about a wholesale look at the whole program to get it back to where it should have been, where the intent was before. And so that would be a good step in that direction. So just what you've laid out here, but I mean, that's how we've looked at it historically, that we tried a couple times, but it just sort of seemed to take no different in timing than the ones we prepared ourselves. So I look forward to how this plays out.
Yeah, I think it's just there are some parts of this that are not broken. It just was never implemented in the way we're just discussing it now. So it's, but again, with Judy, that other one said the feedback, it just, I think for everybody, it's that light bulb of how can you improve and maintain a program if you don't have that.
Well, especially the feedback, even for the applications we submit, sometimes we don't get much in the way of feedback.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of there's a potential issue or something, but
that's all going to come within the program management. You got to think about that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Rachel Dunson.
Hi, Rachel Dunson with Davenport Engineering. Thank you for letting me comment. Just wanted to, I guess, had a couple questions and a few recommendations. I think this is a great idea to kind of get it revamped. I know one of my questions would be to something you mentioned earlier was, is there, you had mentioned that it would hope to kind of expedite review. Would the maybe future program hope to take the place of submitting an application as expedited? Like, would that be an incentive for a facility to, actually pursue a CPP to do that? Or is that just completely separate from when a facility, asks for the permit to be expedited review?
I think, we'll take both into consideration right now. I think right now, the streamlining step we were contemplating is, I'll call it jumping the line, but it's basically an engineer or CPP in this case has already done a thorough review, which they're accountable for as part of the CPP program, and therefore is ready to bypass or get pre-screened by staff, but go straight to senior engineer, whereas it might have taken weeks, months at staff level to review. But that would happen outside of our process and then go straight to the senior engineer. You mentioned taking the place of XPP. Like I said before, it is XPP because we're a government agency, those fees have to go to something. Is those XPPs pay for overtime if once it was submitted, the senior engineer were to or was able to work overtime on that to get through it that much faster. There is still the queue we have to work through on that. But that's the thinking there. So separate right now, but take everything's up for discussion right now.
Good. Okay. And then a couple more things, just tidbits. I know I'm not a CPP myself. I do work with a couple of CPPs at my respective, consulting firm. And I do quite a few applications. And so it hasn't been something that has seemed to, I guess, impede me. But I know based on when the testing for the CPP is and some of the coursework is typically in the first part of the year. So it just has not worked out to even try to go after that. But since it hasn't really seemed to impede anything, I haven't really done that. But I did want to say, is there also a plan for updating like the technical guidance document that's available online? I know that's pretty outdated. And so there's things that, just through experience, I've really learned with the permit engineers and have been able to, really kind of speed up the process of different applications I've worked on. But I know that there's a lot of information that's just really not available on the website. And I know that's kind of an effort of this group to get that going. But, things like emission factors or CACs or, just different things in the technical guidance that could help with that. One of the other recommendations I wanted to make was if there could be a possibility to expanding the CPP to be more like, kind of like the CARB GHG verification, where there's kind of a basis, but then there's also specialties. Because I know the rules and regulations, it's such a broad topic to try to cover in, one particular exam. But maybe something that has more complexities like the oil and gas or refineries or logistics and terminals and things like that, where there could be, or maybe one for coatings and spray booths or different things like that. So different, trying to categorize them into maybe some specialties could potentially help folks maybe go after some additional CPP or have additional enhancements or specifications in those areas. But I know the exam, I don't think is really set up for that. But that might be something to look into. If that's something that would be considered.
Yeah, great. No, thank you very much for that. That is something, you hit that we've been discussing too as a potential, but well, first, as far as the exam, you do want to continue reaching out to CPPs who have gone through that and, get feedback on that exam process. Be looking at that too, but, we also have our laboratory approval program, which is handled through a different division, but it's for source testing companies and labs where they go through the process of getting certified to perform certain methods. And that's kind of in line with what you just said, where we were contemplating it, hadn't really followed up on that, but I'm glad to hear it come from you as well, Rachel, maybe it's specialties is maybe as a CPP, I'm only going to do spray booths, and that's what I'm focusing on. That's what I can do. I mean, the other thing as we build this out is, I mentioned starting small, is maybe we do, you get a spray booth specialty, you get I don't think of other things. I don't want to say wastewater, but smaller equipment based. Okay, we have a vote for wastewater facilities, but
tanks could be another one. But.
There you go, tanks. Do we build it out that way? Which is very possible. I think as we go through these discussions internally, some of the hurdle challenges we think of is that works for single application scenarios. Here's my auto body spray booth, I'm going to do it. If I'm doing a tank, a boiler, abrasive blasting, an oven, is how does that then work into the CPP program? Not saying it can't, be addressed, but that's, some of our discussions internally. Definitely like feedback on, but do appreciate all of that, Rachel. I think, for testing as well do we need to rethink the testing? Does it need to, include training or testing multiple years? Try not to use the stick too much, maybe.
That's a good idea, but I guess the next question would be, if you have that specialty and you trust people to put an application together that's better, how much faster can it go? Or does it still go to the senior and it's still the same time frame?
Right. Yeah, in which case, that's when I think we asked to build out those positions where we can see it. Because what you're essentially doing is building out your senior to staff ratio, because now you're taking on the CPP permit applications. And I don't want to dissuade anybody, but it's, do you really move the needle? Or do you just create a bigger pile?
Exactly.
Thank you. All right, want to keep the discussion going with the public. Rita Aloof. Rita, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Rita Aloof, RadTech International. First, I wanted to shout out to Luke from the CPP registration or renewal team for excellent customer service. And then a suggestion, because I got my CPP license ages ago, and other than renewing every year, I don't really have much interaction with staff on that level. So have you thought about maybe having a CPP forum so that you can update the CPPs on any current issues and how to support staff better, or some of the gaps that staff is seeing in the applications coming in, and just new issues that come up. I think that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. That is something we had talked about. We have, and this is the type of item we developed our permitting working group for this type of audience, where we could bring in CPPs to discuss this. I don't think we're there yet, but maybe early part of 2025, we could contemplate bringing them in, discussing, all of this. The program would be very helpful, and also have more open discussion on what this program could be. Something you brought up is that you're a CPP, but may not utilize it. Another item just for discussion is, do we have two tiers of CPP? Is those that obtain their license, to become familiar with our process, but then maybe there's the actively practicing CPPs that choose to put their stamp on the applications, or maybe a CPP chooses not to employ their stamp. I'm just using the euphemism for certain applications where they're not really sure how it's going to go. They don't want to put their I'll say certification behind it because they don't know where the project's going to go for whatever reason. But is that something that needs to be considered? Is two types of CPPs. Let's move on. I see James York is next.
Okay. I'm James York, Director of Technical Services at York Engineering here. And Judy's sorry that she's sick, so she can't talk right now, but I think in general, your description of what happened with the process historically, that CPPs would submit applications and then there'd be some issue with it, and it would, end up in a kind of a regular processing mode rather than a CPP processing mode was our experience as well. And then as a result, the kind of benefits of using the CPP became less prominent, and then less incentive to use it. I think the comments on the carrots and the sticks is interesting and a good thing to keep in mind. And I think it just goes to really clear feedback to the CPPs as to what caused the application to not be evaluated under the CPP process. And that way the CPPs can learn over time. Maybe in addition to that, very clear guidance on what is or isn't required. Like, it just came up, the statement of basis came up, and I know that there's a CEQA element to the permits as well. So, and I don't think those have ever been included in the CPP process. Whether they should or not is a potential point of discussion, but I think, updated CPP manual, clear guidance for what is and isn't expected in that CPP application, and then just consistent and strong feedback. Even if a CPP application that isn't quite up to the CPP standards just gets bounced to the regular process rather than going directly to the senior engineer, or it gets rerouted rather, that would be a fantastic thing to know, and know why it happened.
Yeah.
Just so you don't get the same mistakes over and over again, which I think is probably a significant part of the issue historically, is it would get rerouted out of the CPP process and then you'd never know why. And so that, that's just a little bit about what we were thinking along those lines as an organization that has a bunch of CPPs that probably quite frankly, don't use them as much as we could because the benefits just fell by the wayside.
Thank you for that, James. Do you think, I mentioned the working group meeting, is that something that, I know York Engineering has a number of CPPs, that would be a good next step to continue to discuss these items?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess Judy's here on this permitting task force, and Judy or one or more of our CPPs could be assigned to do that. We would definitely like to support that.
Okay, and that's even, I'll say even more of an open forum. This is a public meeting, but I think that the discussion there gets much more in depth and back and forth. And then agree, you mentioned CEQA. Once I was flipping through the CPP manual, I think it was yesterday, just refamiliarizing myself with that, and I completely agree. It gives an account of what CEQA is, but it couldn't equip somebody to go forth on a project and know what's expected of them for permitting in relation to CEQA. So definitely understand you on that one. The manual hasn't been updated since 2011, so we fully acknowledge there's a number of things that need to be updated. And I think whether it's this task force or the working group with the CPPs, we'll look to start to enhance it, revisit it, just everything across the board under the permitting enhancement program.
Well, and maybe maybe if you're asking CPPs to wade into a world more complicated like CEQA, that just becomes a carve out where it's still in district hands, and that doesn't cause it to get bounced to the regular pile of applications. I don't know what the answer is there, but I'm just saying there's probably a little complexity around that and the statement of basis and some of these other things that are, I guess really South Coast AQMD ends up on the hook for. It's harder for them to outsource those probably to the CPP than just a complete application package. So again, I don't know what the answer is, but that would be a couple thoughts.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I don't think I've fully thought about it, having those carve outs where it's just something that needs to be done, but yeah, maybe is too complex, or just the CPP program just doesn't cover. It would be done independently.
I mean,
but thank you.
Alternatively, you could fold them into the CPP program, but then you might need more in the manual and et cetera, like you mentioned. It's just, I guess there are decisions to be made there.
Or we have the specialties that Rachel was talking about, potentially. Okay. Thank you. All right, next up is Natasha Meskel.
Thank you, Natasha Meskel with Ecotech.
No.
I'm CPP since 1997. And as far as the feedback on how did this program work for me, I was super excited when I got it, and the fact that they learned a lot through the training. It was still administered in a district at a time. But unfortunately, I did not notice any benefits as far as the speed of processing. But I noticed a disadvantage when I was doing full CPP application because it wouldn't be competitive since I would need more time to do the full evaluation. So I have to admit, I still do a very complete package, but not maybe on a CPP level because it just couldn't compete because the clients and consultant clients would not see any benefits to it. I never recall getting any feedback. But I am a big believer in this program, and I think it has so much potential. And my basic recommendation is first to jump before anything else in updating of CPP manual. And my related question is, how different is CPP manual from the guidance for your internal permitting engineers? Could this be the same document? Maybe a little more intro for the CPPs, but once you go in core details about a specific application, Actually, I think of making such a document public and updated on a regular basis, because I'm sure your permitting engineer discovered the most unique new cases that were not documented before, would be super, super efficient for expedite processing, regardless of anything else. If this is a public document, can be used by engineer, by CPPs, and by general public. Will make everybody's life more easier if expectations are clear and hands-on where can information be found and what is expected. How are they different?
That makes sense if CPPs and engineers are doing the same, well, trying to reach the same goal
Yes,
with the processing, that they could be the same. I think we'll take that back. I don't.
I had
That's a-
difficulty hearing, was you referring to from pricing handbook?
Yeah, the permit processing
Okay,
handbook
yes.
versus the CPP
Right.
handbook is if they could be the same. The same document.
I think for certain aspects, yes, the CPP manual, a lot of it covers administrative type procedures, whereas permit processing handbook covers some more of the technical things associated with equipment itself. And so initially, we were going to create administrative chapters for the permit processing handbook, but in revisiting the CPP manual, that does seem to serve dual purposes. So from that aspect, I would agree that that part of it could be the same resource document. That once we update them.
Okay.
and
Yeah,
it's
but that-
much, also the additional advantage of that approach would be it's much easier to keep it current.
Mhm.
And everybody who is working on, I have a new project I'm working, before I do anything else, I would go there and check, were there any updates since I last time did the same kind of equipment? So I can always be the most current, because we're all learning. I mean, every
Right.
time you learn, because you have unique aspects to the process, or, starting from what we have, we know more things now. More things are required to be evaluated, reported, taken into consideration in permitting processing. So that would be fantastic. I think this would be such a huge step ahead. And I'm also seeing, okay, maybe I'm seeing too much connections, and I do not know how we are doing. We're developing smart permit applications online. But, if this can, this would aid that process as well, because you have a clear specification. And if it's online, then on top of it, getting the complete, and you can have a two-version online CPP version and the regular one if they don't wanna, like the reporting facility or permitted entity does not have expertise to do everything that CPP would do. But at least that we make sure that all the SDSs are in, all the VOC contents for all SDSs in, that you do not even allow them to try to submit application. Okay, these are just very simple kind of being, two simple samples. I mean, permitting is so much more than that, but I think it could speed up or simplify the online smart permit application development. And also anything new we learn, update can go through everything. So this is getting me very excited. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with permitting since 1994. So such a positive consideration like this one, super exciting and recommendable. And I heard some people say applications are going faster. So it's the things are doing better, but I still have one open spray booth modification that as of today, wait, I just checked, it's 795 days of processing and it's still not finalized.
Thank you. I think just this morning I said, we're seeing progress, things are getting stable, but we still got a lot of work to do. Fair enough. Thank you, Natasha, on that.
Love initiative, love the technical group's idea, have many more detailed samples, but I don't want to take too much time since this is preliminary discussion.
Yeah, thank you for that. Combining the technical documents is a good idea, because I'd already written to myself that as part of this, we definitely need to make templates more readily available to CPPs as we updated those, but that would fit in with that effort as well.
Thank you. So also my compliments to Luke and customer support for the current program. And I would love, like a forum, maybe let's say GG third-party verifiers. They have at least once a year mandatory overview of the changes. And it can be attended live, or it can be recording, can be reviewed, but some kind of continuity in communication and feedback if the district has different preference than CPP point of view. I think that those are extremely beneficial, would be extremely beneficial elements.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, especially, as rules get amended or adopted, having that bridge from the planning division to implementation to include CPPs as well, patient permitting staff, I think would be helpful. Thank you. I'm gonna switch over to David right now.
Just to add on to the subject matter that came up, it's really good. The CPP manual, as I see online, is dated 2011.
Yes.
Is there a plan to update it? Because it meshes with everything we're talking about.
I think through this process, it's going to be part of that process and how we do it. When we develop this program, or as we develop this program, this will come along with it. But absolutely, I mean, there's requirements that have developed since then that are not in line.
I guess part of this is just there's a lot of good ideas, but obviously you're gonna have to have staff maintaining these. So it gets back to what your resources you have for getting back, what's going to get you the most bang for the buck to get the permits flowing faster. So all these ideas are great, but somehow we need to have a metric saying, okay, here's what's going to get things moving fastest. Here's where it needs to be maintained. And if you need to go to the board, I'm happy to go to the board members. You need more resources to do X, Y, and Z to address the problem.
Yeah.
So that would be really helpful to bring things back, saying, here's these ideas. Here's where we think we can make the most progress by focusing on this and this and this.
Yeah. Well, I think, definitely, I mentioned the stats next time is maybe let's build that into the discussion. This is all great. So we'll see bottlenecks here. As we build CPP how is this interplay going to work? And then if we do enhance the CPP presented under PEP to the board, that's the added discussion of these are all great ideas, but at the end of the day, is it really going to expedite anything? Or here are the resources we need to make it work.
Like we found the bottleneck is this, and the ask would be more staff. If that's something you're not comfortable with, I'm not shy. I'm happy to, help you out.
Now, do appreciate that feedback and all the support for it. But it is definitely part of the consideration. We've made it through the first year of PEP. We still got a year to go. I think this is going to be one of the highlights of year 2 of PEP. I think to focus on, but ideas are great, but how do we make it work? All right. Do we have any other hands raised, discussion? Natasha, you still have your hand raised. I just want to make sure.
Yes, on purpose. Sorry, I forgot to mention something.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
For letting me. Okay, so just to encourage the whole thing, maybe you should consider having 2 types of expedite processing. One type when it's fully blown expedite processing without ZPP and you need overtime for engineer and supervisor. And then the lower fee when you need only overtime for the supervisor. So this would also encourage the facility applying for permit to submit a full CPP package and maybe make then proposals more competitive with the others if they know they will be processed faster.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take that in consideration. There's different strategies you can use for fees and that, but thank you. We'll keep that in mind. See an additional hand raise, Bill Quinn. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so I thought this was a really great meeting, a lot of good ideas. And what I'm thinking about, I don't want to stop the momentum here. So can you share with us any thoughts for next steps?
I think for next steps is, internally we'll do this, but I think we want to start getting some timelines on what we're going to work out. The manual is one of the big ones. What I would like to do is definitely hear from the CPP universe themselves. One of the later slides, I have potential meeting dates. But maybe in March is when our next task force or working group, but potentially meeting with the CPPs then, and then building out the steps of this program. And then I'm just thinking on my feet here, but with the goal of presenting to the board in third quarter what this is actually. Third quarter? Yeah, I believe so. Third quarter of 2025 of what the final program design is going to be. Initially, I think, we got to talk about it internally. I know you want some, just loose next steps, but I think we can do that. David's team oversees it, so
Yeah,
make sure not committing
Well,
too much.
I wasn't sure if it's third or fourth quarter. That's
Yeah, third, whenever we go back to the board.
Yeah.
I don't have that in front of me. But I think at the that PEP presentation, I think we should have fully built out what we have in process, our goals for the program, and then basically just be in go mode at that point with the program.
And if there's a need to identify possible additional resources.
Yes. Yeah,
It would be at that meeting.
yeah, that really is the concern as we all think about this is more on the program management side. If it is staff doing training or tracking, keeping tabs on what evaluations are coming in, if those discussions do have to be had, that we're not getting quality work and those have to be off ramped. Who's going to do that? Is it, or is those staff resources better just doing evaluations themselves? And, the strategies to make it work are very important on how we utilize those resources. And again, I think it was James who said of the deliberate communication of when it's getting off ramp from the CPP evaluation process is important as well. But I think this all has to be spelled out, and maybe we can aim for, I have March or April for a permitting working group. Maybe we start building this out for that meeting and talk about it more with that end of year target for that presentation for the board. Until then, we're all ears for other ideas. It doesn't have to take place in this forum. If anyone's listening, has ideas, wants to drop emails or have a phone call, please do. I do know I'll be reaching out to Judy, to have more discussions. But there's a lot of potential there.
Beyond, I don't know if you want to do the next agenda item, but I was kind of thinking on the same lines as far as what next.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of ideas,
Mhm.
but it'd be nice to start saying, here are things that we think are worth pursuing. One thing we've talked about is like certain rules, if they could be cleaned up to make it easier on permitting. What can we prioritize to get the permits flowing faster? One of my things, I'm getting nervous about certain permits I have in my agency is I have public projects that have to go forward. I'm about to call Terrence Mann saying, I'm building this without a permit. Not the way to go, but I've had to do that more and more. I don't know if it's useful to get enforcement in part of the loop here saying, what do you do when you have that difficult dilemma of having to build something you can't get the permit to construct yet? Could there be, enforcement discretion if you go down this route?
Okay. I'm going to lean on council too much. Go ahead, David.
I was just wondering if that was an extension of the CPP discussion or that was already.
Well, I was teeing up the next
more-
item.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's more of
I
a
missed the connective tissue.
task force discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's close, let me make a deliberate item. We're gonna end the item 3 for the certified permitting professional. I think we've gone to public comment a couple times, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then we'll move on to, let's go on in our, when I present the other business first, because I have some items here, and we'll jump into that. But let's go to, well, first off, let me identify a couple items, because I did want to bring some things up before we get into the schedule. Something to be aware of for everybody is we talked about our tier 4 engine source testing guidance document extensively in this task force, and also back to scientific review committee. I want to let everybody know we're doing a slight revision to that document, is just to make some clarifications on ammonia testing, because there is within the method duplicate testing. So we want to clarify that between doing 2 runs versus duplicate testing. The document itself will look different when we release it. I just want to let everybody know that is because we're doing it through our new SOP process under PEP. So it's going to get different formatting to it. It is, for the most part, going to be the same document when we post it upcoming, but we're just making those ammonia testing clarifications for everyone's knowledge, and that will go up on the website.
Question, because I'm trying to do that at the moment. Has anyone gone through that process yet? Because I'm finding a lot of hiccups with how to do the testing.
Yes, we have had somebody, I would say, I would touch base with our back team or Bosser for that process. Because that was it, is as people went through, we found the little hiccups we need to clarify. So now is the time to do it as we clarify those. The other item I wanted to bring up is we have been testing our new electronic forms. This fits well with how to best utilize staff time. It does eat up a lot of time, but I talked with our IM department, our staff developing that. What we would like to ask is for volunteers to help us test those forms. IM department says they can do it remotely. It will take some time out of the calendar, but we would ask for volunteers who are very familiar with using our forms. I think CPPs would be prime volunteers for this effort.
I can volunteer someone for it.
Great, thank you very much. But if you are interested in doing so and can commit the time and can provide us the input, I would say reach out to David Ono, email address dono@aqmd.gov, and express your interest. That would help us get these forms done and tested much more quickly, and we can have permit processing staff focus on their permit processing duties. It's just, the pool of different priorities. So we would appreciate any assistance with that. I do see a hand raised, but I do want to go next slide, please. And then we'll open it up. Go ahead. So we just revisiting the tentative task force working group meetings. As I said, in past meetings, we have a number of reports and commitments that we got to get to the board in January, February. So we're looking at our next, there will be a governing board presentation in the March timeframe. We're also looking for PEP. We're also looking to come back to the task force or have a working group meeting around that timeframe as well, and then hit March, May, June. This is all a little flexible, but I just want to put the tentative schedule out there for everyone's information. And so for other business, let me open it up to the task force for discussion. We kind of hit on it a little bit, but unfortunately, procedure.
So I was just curious, the source test portal, how's that progressing? Or
I know, because I told you, stay tuned.
you did tell me to stay tuned.
And I was expecting it to be out by now. We do discuss it internally. I think we're going to have a meeting tomorrow to talk about status. My understanding is the effort right now is the process to get everybody signed up. to submit those, because the users basically.
Users.
Yeah, and Bill Welsh is for that. I am awaiting as eagerly as you are. That was the last update I got a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we have some source tests coming up spring, so if
Okay.
it was in place, we could.
I will
make
now
use of it.
say I hope it is launched by them. It should be. Keep hearing it. It's coming in the mail. All right. I don't know. Do we have anybody from source testing that's on? I don't see anyone.
Saad's on.
Oh, okay. Saad, do you have any
Okay,
updates on the
okay.
source test portal? And you probably weren't prepared to speak to it, but.
Hey, Jason, sorry. I don't have an update, but I think the same update that you mentioned is Bill and Jason were kind of discussing how they're going to approve all these folks who are going to submit and make sure that they are properly certified by a get their papers in and approved so that they're able to submit. That's where we're at.
Because I think it's not just you as a facility, but those you designate, the source testing companies, consultants, any facility is how to go about that process for what gets submitted, what could, the back and forth of who's authorized to do that and manage it. Is the last I heard, confirmed by Saad. All right, we'll go to public comment right now about the business. I see Natasha was up.
Thank you, me again. Yes, I was wondering as far as beta testing, I would definitely offer to participate. Would it be possible that we get access to the permitting manual for your engineers? Because application forms try in most of the cases to cover any possible variation for the subject matter, right? So although I might have a lot of experience with the specific cases, I doubt that they addressed every checkbox there is. So it would be very helpful to get the most of the beta testers, if you would be willing to share the instructions for processing that I would guess address more than we have specific experience with.
Okay. I think maybe as we gather volunteers, because there's a number of forms to do, maybe we get form testing with volunteers and expertise. But we can talk about that. We'll take you as a volunteer, and then when we move forward, provide more of the training expectations that will come with the testing of the forms. Thank you. Next, Rita.
Yes, thank you. Last week I attended the Rule 317 webinar, and originally the staff report in that rule estimated about 300 facilities would be impacted by the fees. It's my understanding that over 600 facilities received notices that they would be charged fees. So that's double the original estimate. There's applications for exclusions under 317. And my question is that going to be the engineering department in charge of processing those plans under 317? And if so, how do you think this will impact the permit streamlining efforts? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your concern. That is always a concern of mine as we went through this. It's going to be a mix. For the exclusion plans, those will come to permitting. We expect those facilities that qualify for that, it will be a very quick, simple process. Because the AR should be done. We expect, I would anticipate a lot of those facilities would fall into that. More facilities were grabbed in the data pool simply because there were large historical PTEs in the system, and it casts a wide net. Many of those have been keeping that PTE because they can utilize it for further growth, and maybe that hasn't happened, and they've been low emitting. I think we're all aware of some of those facilities that are out there, but with that AER or maybe some equivalent record keeping would establish that they could be excluded. For the challenge applicability, that will be a combined effort of divisions. We're still hashing out the details of that process. I think we're speaking to it today. Where it will involve planning as the or planning division as initial and final contact, and then we'll say it may go to, say within the planning group, it may go to our AER, depending on team, depending on what it is. It could come over to engineering if it is based on PTE of the facility. It will be planning receiving those. Hopefully most of those don't impact the EMP division, but we'll handle those as they come. Part of this too is getting out the information. We talked about the PTE list that we're going to post that our admin team's currently working on. I think that will be a great resource for everyone to know exactly why, if they're being pulled in on PTE, exactly the permit unit or units that are causing that, so we can focus that discussion. All right. Thank you, Rita. Next, we have Rachel Dunson again. Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, yes. Thank you. Just a quick question regarding the source test portal. Is that similar to Sedri, related to Sedri, or is that completely separate?
Okay, I have one of our task force members, Bill, here saying no. Sorry, you had a number of puzzled looks because I don't think we know the program.
That's the federal program.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's the federal program, but I know there's
okay.
been a few things that have started to incorporate with that. So I just wanted to double check and make sure. Okay.
Okay, it's different, and thank you to our for stepping up for that question.
I was quick on that. Don't want to go down there.
All right. Any other questions or comments on other business? Okay. Let's go to the next. Before we conclude, I will open up to any general public comment. Anyone from the public wish to make a statement before we adjourn? Seeing none. Oh, we have one. Natasha, go ahead.
This time, just big thank you for looking at all those issues we discussed today.
Thank you. No, I am, that's a good one to take us out, but want to thank everybody. I've been really looking forward to this particular discussion, coming back to it, continue to build on it. Thank you for the feedback, because again, it's not just how we build these programs, but are they actually going to make a difference in making sure we keep track of them and manage them so they can get us over that hump with permit processing. And also, for all the other presentations, thank you. We're seeing positive results from that, but like I said earlier, still have a long way to go and a lot of work to do, but appreciate the feedback, appreciate any volunteers we get to help with the work. I think we all have common interests in getting this to the finish line and setting these goals and maintaining them. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a safe, wonderful holiday season. We will likely see most of you after the new year. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.